In a lot of these places, tourism is good for a destination. It's putting money into the pockets of the locals, it's driving the local economy. But I've seen it have the opposite effect, where the tourism dollar becomes like crack for the locals.
When did travel become another thing to conquer? Somewhere along the way, holidays stopped being about rest and started becoming about achievement. We planned the greatest hits tour, 5 cities over 7 days, sunrise alarms, late nights, a camera roll full of proof that we were there, but very little space to actually be there. And if we're honest, many of us return home more exhausted than when we left. So the question is, are we traveling? Or are we just relocating our busyness?
Life has got busier, life has got more stressful, but we're loading up our holidays as another stress, and we've turned holidays or travel into another source of burnout.
In this week's episode, I'm joined by my brother, Mark Hodgson, founder of Mind and Body Travel, and we unpack the noise around modern travel. We explore the challenge of overpacked itineraries and why more isn't always better.
Our biggest challenge, and what we do, is we coach and we inspire our clients and we encourage them just to, okay, let's just change your itinerary. Let's tweak it a little bit here. Let's include a few things that maybe you hadn't considered.
We talk about authenticity, what it really means to have an off the beaten path experience in a world where everything feels curated and commercialized. And we dive into restorative travel and the idea that time away shouldn't just distract us from life, but recalibrate us for it. Mark shares stories from designing journeys across Europe and leading expeditions to amazing places like Antarctica, where even something as unpredictable as sea conditions can shape not just the itinerary, but the perspective you return home with.
I'm not about telling people they can't go somewhere, but don't make your holiday all about the tick the box destinations.
This conversation challenges the way we think about holidays, time off, and even success. Because the real measure of a journey isn't how far you go, it's who you become along the way and how you return when you arrive back home. If you're looking to unpack the noise around travel in 2026 and rethink what holidays, rest, adventure, and intentional time away are really meant to give us, then you're going to want to tune in to this episode. Helping us unpack the noise around travel, holidays, and time off, and rediscover what they're really meant to give us. This week is my guest, Mark Hodgson, who also is my brother. Welcome, bro.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be here.
Mark, what does the noise of life mean to you?
For me, I think it's everything external. So the messages, the expectations that we think about, society puts on us. It's what we see on social media. It's what we think that we should be doing or how we should be acting. For me, that's the greatest noise I've found in my life. It's a constant battle to not listen to that, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously for a lot of people, they love travel. You and I have a shared love of travel as well. And there's a lot of noise around travel these days. What are you seeing out there talking and working with your clients?
Yeah, I think it's a really great point, the noise around travel, because it is the same as, like, I think, general life. There's expectations. If you go to Europe, there's expectations that you're supposed to see things and do things. There's also the noise of trying to fill everything in and jam pack everything, which I'm seeing a lot, and AI is helping people research and plan, but wow, we're seeing some crazy itineraries forwarded to us from clients that they've started their initial plans, and 3 weeks in Europe with 10 different cities and 6 internal flights and 2 nights here and 1 night there. It's taking us a long time to coach that client to strip the noise and end up with a much simpler and more efficient and enjoyable itinerary.
So itinerary sometimes where you've got, they arrive late one night and then they've got a 7 a.m., 12-hour tour to the Grand Canyon or something.
Yeah, actually, the Grand Canyon's a great example because people think it's just right next to Vegas, but if you want to go to the South Rim, it's about a 5-hour drive. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So a big day. So obviously you founded Mind and Body Travel in 2019. You've now been in the industry over a couple of decades, which is awesome. Tell me, was there a moment in your travel journey where you kind of visited somewhere or you were traveling and you kind of went, hang on, we're doing this wrong?
There's been a few. I'll I'll go to the most recent one, which was actually last year, and I was in Vietnam, and we went to it was my first time to Vietnam, staying at this beautiful, wellness resort on the beach near in Da Nang, and we did a day trip to Hoi An, and we did this beautiful private calligraphy session, learnt the ancient art of language, in Vietnam, and had this beautiful experience, and then it was sort of turning into late afternoon, early evening, and we thought we'll stay in Hoi An for a few hours and soak all that up. And it's I've always expected Hoi An to be this beautiful, cultural hotspot, um, and it was shoulder to shoulder. And there was it's very well known for its lanterns, and you can take a ride on a lantern boat. And I was trying to approximate how many boats there was on this little stretch of river in Hoi An, and I think it would have been at least 250 lantern boats, and people are paying their 20 or 30 US to do their ride, which is fine, and it it's quite a spectacle. But I was I was there and I felt dirty because everything that I'm about in travel is about not ticking the box and not following the
Mm.
crowds. And here I was in a place where that I thought was going to be beautiful, and it felt like a real tourist hotspot. And yeah, that was really disappointing for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know when, and we've spoken about this, when I've gone to locations with the family and, I'll say to the driver, take me somewhere that's not on the brochure. And you find these amazing places, or they take you to these villages which maybe don't get as many tourists in there, and you just get this really grounded, kind of just beautiful experience. You feel like you're walking into someone's home and they welcome you, and they're so excited to tell you about their village and what they do, and they just love people asking questions. And you kind of get this one-on-one, almost, VIP experience. And you haven't paid the hundreds of dollars to actually go on one of these tours, to the Blue Lagoon or whatever it is, wherever it is. And I think that's something that is probably starting to come out a little bit more. I know there's a little bit of pushback from different parts of different countries that are like, "Okay, you've found us now. Now you can go away."
Yeah. Well, the thing is that in a lot of these places, a lot of the conventional wisdom is, well, tourism is good for a destination. It's putting money into the pockets of the locals. It's driving the local economy. But I've seen it have the opposite effect, where the tourism dollar becomes like crack for the locals. You know, for and they rely on it so much, and it just becomes this machine. And the destinations lose their authenticity. They lose their way of life. The environment, the facilities and the infrastructure is not equipped for it. There's a lot of downsides to that, and so uh, I'm not about telling people they can't go somewhere, but don't make your holiday all about the tick the box destination. So, I guess if people go to Europe, they want to see the Eiffel Tower, they want to see the Colosseum, but don't load every day of your 4-week itinerary in Europe with tick the box things. Find other destinations, get out of the cities. And, for people that are listening and maybe planning a holiday or thinking about, an adventure, the ironic thing and the crazy thing is that whenever we recommend somewhere that's off the beaten track or wasn't in the itinerary that the initial plan that the clients had, 99% of the time they come back and say that was our favorite part. So our biggest challenge, and what we do, I think, quite well as a team, is we coach and we inspire our clients and we encourage them just to, okay, let's just change your itinerary. Let's tweak it a little bit here. Let's include a few things that maybe you hadn't considered. And they come back and they're their favorite parts. So the the term we use quite often is we call it a greatest hits tour. So if you're going to Europe and you're going to Paris, Rome, Barcelona, and you're doing all the tick the box, we call it the greatest hits tour. Whereas you want to, if you think about that in a music point of view, an album is a journey, uh, and and there's some tracks on there that you might discover that weren't singles. What are those places when you're not just doing the greatest hits tour around a destination?
And an example of that was in Rome last year. I caught up with Bob, and we Bob and Heather in Rome, and you had found this cooking experience, right? And
Yeah.
we kind of got a taxi out there, a little bit out of the city, went to an apartment, and it was just amazing. This kind of nonna, kind of basically invites us in, and we're making pasta with her and her son, and they're explaining the culture and their family, and how their grandparents and how they were taught to cook, and showed us how to do it, and we had some Aperol spritzes, and they it was just beautiful, and we were in their home, and then when we cooked the meal, we then sat down at the table at their family table in their formal living area, and sat there and drank wine and ate this food, which was absolutely amazing. It was a nice pasta dish, and then we had homemade tiramisu, which was absolutely melt in your mouth, amazing. And by the end of the evening, we felt like we were family, like we were exchanging numbers, there were hugs and kisses, and we walked away just going, that was just unreal, right? And that's kind of some of those experiences you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And authenticity is what you experienced that night. Even though it's a tour that or a cooking class that anyone can book, and it's in a business, and they're obviously making
Mm.
money out of it. But you got 10 out of 10 authenticity that night.
Yeah. And cost-wise, it was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, it was we actually, before we even cooked, they took us down to the supermarket and the market and talked through all the different ingredients and why they buy this and why they buy that, and then they took us down the wine aisle. Anyone that's hasn't been to Italy, it's basically an aisle at Woolies or Coles that's just every type of wine that you can get, which was just amazing, and they were just explaining so much, and it was just, yeah, as you say, an authentic experience. Um, and I think on that, Mark, I'd love to ask you, are people traveling for themselves these days, or are they still traveling to post the pictures and for what others see online?
It's probably hard for me to say because our client base, or our clients that come to us, they get a feel, even if they're new clients to us, they get a feel that we're about something a bit different rather than just the latest deal, on the in the window of a travel agency. So we're seeing a lot of clients change their mindset there, and they do want something different. And when someone does come to us that just wants, is traveling for themselves rather than an experience, it's like it stands out to us now. We're like, whoa, hang on, this doesn't feel right, or this doesn't feel good. And so sometimes, quite often we'll influence clients, to and when I say influence, sometimes that can sound like a bad word, but we're actually influencing people from thinking logistically about an itinerary, price, destination, what are they doing, to when they're there, and actual experience and how they feel. That's our job. The booking of a holiday is 5% of what we do. It's actually the design and the management of it that really makes the difference. So we're seeing when we put interesting, different, beautiful things in front of our clients, 9 times out of the 10, that's what they want, and they book it, and they have an amazing time.
And that's where pictures and photography come in now, around actually kind of getting the true essence of the experience from those photos as well. I know you've taken photos on your adventures so have I, and you can look at photos and you just can feel community, or you can just feel nature. So I think how photography and how people are posting stuff sometimes, you can see, have they just taken a picture of the Mona Lisa on the wall, or have they actually taken a picture, somewhere else in the art gallery, and it gives you an essence of the space and the enormity, and the true authenticity of actually, having that experience through, the Louvre in Paris, for
Yeah.
instance.
Yep. And it's a great point, and I'd challenge anyone that's traveling and taking photos and posting them is to think about what's the purpose of me posting these photos. If it's for ego, I'd challenge you to think a little bit differently. Uh, for me, it should be what value can I show? Like, we can all educate ourselves or educate our friends and educate our families and inspire them. Absolutely, that's what posting should be, but it shouldn't be look at me. I don't think anyway, because that does not help anyone. And it actually then creates over tourism because everyone sees these perfect photos and wants to go there to get that perfect photo. And then it just creates chaos. So think about, yeah, what value are your posts giving to the people that you're posting for?
Yeah. And sometimes as well, and I'm sure people listening to this have seen the same, they see something on Instagram or they see something posted, then they actually visit that location and they go, "Oh, that's how they get that photo," right? There's one in Bali where it looks like it's a lake and it's got reflections and everything like
Oh,
that, but when you get there, it's like they hold a mirror up so that it kind of, like, I suppose mirrors, the view
mhm,
to make it look like
mhm.
it's a complete picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah. Tell me about, so obviously in the last year, I was looking up today, about quarter of people in Australia have traveled overseas, and about 60% travel domestically on holidays and their time off. What are people missing in some of these experiences when they're looking at their time off and the time that they're probably supposed to not be working, but,
Mhm.
really get that restorative travel?
I think the key word is rest, and we think of rest as sleep, or we think of rest as not doing anything or sitting by the pool drinking a cocktail. But if you think about why did people start taking holidays whenever holidays started, decades ago, they took that for a break. And life has got busier, life has got more stressful, but we're loading up our holidays as another stress. And I saw a quote the other day that we've created, we've turned holidays or travel into another source of burnout. So for me, a holiday is about rest, and it's not about not doing anything, but it's about doing things at a pace that is enjoyable. So, we traveled together last year in Valpolicella, which is in Italy, in between Verona and Lake Garda. We stayed at a winery. We went for a day trip to Lake Garda. We went and found a restaurant in a local village. We could go into Verona for a day. We had a beautiful charcuterie board outside our villa overlooking the winery. We did things. We experienced things. We did a wine tasting. But for me, I think of that as a restful time because we took it at our own pace. We weren't following crowds. We weren't in stressful. There wasn't a lot of transport or logistics, and we could just be and experience. And we both agree that was out of that whole trip. That was our favorite moment, or those 3 or 4 days. So for me, thinking about rest and what does that look like um, is, I think, really important, and allowing some space for I guess the destination to come to yourself. So for me in Paris, one of my favorite moments was years ago sitting on a sidewalk restaurant, having a couple of glasses of rosé and just watching Paris go by for an afternoon. Like that's my favorite moment of Paris. Not seeing the Eiffel Tower or not going and taking a selfie with the Mona Lisa to prove that I've been there, which actually I haven't done. And I'm not losing sleep over that because I'm not an art person. So yeah, just that slowing it down, and it doesn't mean that you're missing out. And I think that is one of the key things I see people struggle with. They feel like they've got to load it up. They feel like this FOMO is out of control when people are traveling, when planning their travels. And exercising restraint, okay, just be okay with seeing 4 destinations instead of 10 in your 3 weeks. You'll have a better
Yeah.
time.
100%. And I know when Lockie and I spent a month over in Europe last year and had some great experiences, but it was interesting because years ago when the boys were younger, you know, we did 8 weeks around Europe and it was like crazy, right? Bus tours and you had to go and see the Louvre and then we had to go and see, the Eiffel Tower and it was all that rush, rush, rush. And there was so much stress in that. And I know families have that. Interesting thing for Lockie and I, Lockie's, 18 now, was that we'd actually get to a location and we'd go, right, what's the first thing we're going to do? Okay, we actually worked out the best thing to do first is go and do a walking tour of the city, right? Because the tour guide actually, you might arrive at night or you might arrive early morning, get a walking tour, and then they actually point out where all the key parts are. And then you can kind of go, okay, cool. I've got my bearings. And then you also work out on that tour, where's a good place for dinner? Where could we have breakfast? Where's some walking tracks? And you just get a bit of a feel for the city. And I know we did that. And, for me, Prague was a beautiful example of the walking tour showed you some key points. And then we came home that afternoon, had a bit of a rest. And then, as you know, in Europe, the cities come alive at night, right? So it gives you that good example where you can kind of spend the morning on a few hours doing a tour, have a bit of lunch, have a bit of a rest, and then, you recharge for night. And um, I just loved being able to take it at a slower pace and was kind of like, oh, where should we have brekkie this morning? Or sometimes it's like, oh, what are we going to do today? And we'd jump on and we'd, there's some great sites from a tour perspective, but I really don't look at the top tours. I always look at the reviews, and when they start talking about individual tour guide names and he really brought authenticity or, oh, he was so good and he went above and beyond. They're the kind of organizations I look and book with because I know there's obviously a heart and a soul of that business and the people that work
Mm.
for them match that.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that as well, yeah, so walking tours are a great orientation. We always look to how can we provide some sort of an orientation
Mm.
experience when first in a destination, because then you can maximize the rest of the time there because you've got better bearings. But there's a really big shift to small group tours now, which I'm really happy
Mm.
with in the whole industry. I selling or putting clients on a bus of 40 people around Europe. I can't remember the last time I've done that because it's not what people want anymore. And so small group touring or private touring, if it's families going 4 or 5 people, sometimes a private walking tour is just as cost effective as going on a shared one. And then you've got flexibility and that guide can adapt and what have you. So yeah, there's certainly so many better ways of designing travel than just getting on and booking something that looks okay.
Yeah. And I think, like in Prague, when we did that, Lockie and I just did it with all our walking tours were all private walking tours.
Mm.
And the increase in price from a group price to a couple of us going wasn't actually that bad. Like, and you do get that flexibility, and you get one-on-one, right? So you get more time at the locations. Whereas, when you've got a group of 20 or 30 on it's like, oh, everyone's scatters. And then, it takes 15 or 20 minutes past the time that you were supposed to meet back to, you know, get the people to come back. And then you actually lose time and then you're rushing through it. And a lot of the time you can't actually hear the tour guide anyway. Um,
Mhm.
Only the people at the front, unless you've got headsets, but only the people at the front on a walking tour a lot of the time are the ones that actually hear all the information.
Yeah. And when I've been on tours, day tours, shared, tours in a small group, I've noticed there's a really big disparity between who wants a lot of detailed information and history versus someone that just wants, the orientation and perspective. And a funny story was on a river cruise last year. We did a bike tour. The local guide in the port that we arrived at, there was something went amiss, either he was sick or something, and one of the staff from the river cruise ship hosted the tour or the bike tour, And we got to the first church, and he said, "Okay, so this is a church." Um, and I thought, "Well, that's great because 'cause I'm out here because I wanna ride, I wanna see the city, I don't wanna spend half an hour about the history of this church in Strasbourg," it was. Um, and so for me, that was great, but there was some other people on the tour that they're researching on their phones, what is this church all about and what have you, and that's great as well, but when you're doing private touring, you can your guide can adapt to exactly what you want.
Yeah. I'm always the one, if I go to a city, I always go to the cathedral and I always like to try and get up to the top. You always got you can get up to the spire or whatever it is, which is always, that's just something I did. I did back years ago, and Lockie and I we'd get somewhere in, in Basel, and then we'd get somewhere in England and Salisbury Cathedral, and we'd do all this stuff. And it was just something fun. So everyone does have their what they like, right? There are the people that get the headsets and go through, like like in Rome, they'll go through something and they will spend 12 hours and they will stand and listen to an 8-minute audio at every point on the thing. And that's
Yep.
great. They're really into that. Me, I walk past and go, I'm good.
Mm. Well, and I really respect that, people that are really soaking up the history and the knowledge. And you know, when I was in Vienna a few years ago. Went to the Schönbrunn Palace and learned a lot about the Austrian-Hungarian war and royal family, and I actually found that really interesting. So, there is a lot of amazing information and history out there, but yeah, it certainly comes down to personal preference these days, and time and place sometimes as well.
Yeah. There's obviously a big shift to experiential travel, right? And I know late last year you took a group to Antarctica. Tell us about that.
Wow, it was a phenomenal trip. Certainly, Antarctica. It's a 2-day sailing from Ushuaia at the southern tip of South America to get to Antarctica, and that feeling when you wake up on that first morning where you know that when you open the curtains, there's gonna be Antarctica out there. It was like a kid at Christmas. Um, when you wake up and think your presents are gonna be there, and so opening those curtains on the first morning and just seeing the ice and the mountains that's a moment that, I will never forget. And we had 5 days of sailing and exploring through the Antarctic Peninsula, which was just unbelievable. The wildlife, the scenery, and the expedition teams on the expedition ships that go down to Antarctica, they're so passionate as well, and they really make the experience. We took a group of 12 clients, and we what I really found was doing it with a small group of people that you semi know, because there's that sort of, we're a small group, we're aligned with Mind and Body Travel, we're clients, so sort of that camaraderie there. Sharing that experience was fantastic compared to if it was my wife and I went, or went with one other person. And it's funny, I saw at nights on the ship, a lot of couples have almost run out of words, and you just see them there, they're both on their phones. You're like, "You're in Antarctica," whereas we were, you know, in our little social group, uh, and it really made the experience for everyone in that, which is fantastic. It's very hard to compare Antarctica to any other trip. I don't think you can. It is something that is breathtaking. If you like wildlife, if you like nature, if you like to be inspired, then it is uh, unbelievable. My favorite moment was when I was filming the front of the ship. There was an observation deck, and there were some whales around. So I was filming, and an orca whale came, swam under the ship in front of me, and breached just in front of the ship, and just as I was filming, and I'm just like, oh wow, that was just fantastic. So yeah, certainly an amazing expedition. And it's not cheap. It's a big investment, but if people have got the time and the budget to do it, it should be something that you experience to get away from everything. And the one last thing I'd just say is there was something beautiful about the quiet. There's just there's no noise out there apart from a few penguins, making their racket. But apart from that, it's just quiet. And we don't get that.
Yeah. And some people listening would be thinking, oh, cruise ship, 3,000 people on a boat. Um, these expedition boats are obviously small. Can you kind of give people listening a bit of a idea on how those expedition boats work?
Yeah, absolutely. We travelled with a company called Haytex Expeditions. So they're a Norwegian company, been running expeditions since the late 1800s. So they certainly know what they're doing, and they've also got some very good programs around environmental sustainability. That they're leading leaders in the field. Their ships are a hybrid ship, so they operate on marine diesel and also battery. So at points where they're sailing near wildlife or close to shore, whatever, they can switch off the engines and just sail in silence under battery, which is fantastic. Obviously, it saves fuel as well. Their ships average around 400 people on board, which is slightly larger than a lot of the expedition ships. But I found I called it a Goldilocks ship because I found it was the right size. It was large enough where there were some really nice facilities, and you felt like you're on a larger cruise ship, but you don't have the crowds like you do on a large cruise ship. So I felt it was a really good mix. And a lot of people will say, if you do research on Antarctica, you can only have 100 people landing at a time. So the bigger the ship, the less landings is kind of what you'll find out when you're doing researching. But we felt that the staff did a great job. No one in our group was left wanting. So we felt like we had enough experience. We also enjoyed some chill time on the ship in the sauna, and it sort of forced us to I guess relax as well. So yeah, we found worked really well. The staff were fantastic, and um, one thing I'll just say about uh, I guess the actual expedition and landings and using the zodiacs. So there's a lot of staff to help people get in and out of those zodiacs, because I know for people that don't have great mobility or might be a little bit more mature in age, that's a real concern. But uh, I think unless you have really low mobility, you can go to Antarctica and the staff will look after you. So it and we had my favorite. I shouldn't say favorite, but I think the most inspiring person in our group was a lady who was 78, and she did everything. She just said yes to everything. She was my kayak buddy, so when we were kayaking, she was in the front of my kayak, kayaking in Antarctica. She did the polar plunge. She did every landing, every hike. Uh, she jumped in the hot tub with us. She came in the sauna with us. And at 78, just saying yes, like for me, that is just so inspiring. So um, for me, I don't think age is a barrier to doing something amazing like that.
Yeah. How cold was the water?
It was, about 1 degree, I think, 1 or 2 degrees, so and it was I don't know if it was, if they do it, to stir people up, but, we did the landing on, a volcanic section, so the shoreline, there was steam coming off the water because of the volcanic heat, so you walk in the water and it's like 35 degrees right on the shoreline, like the first foot or 2 was, like, warm, and you're like, "Oh, how good's this?" And then you walk another meter, and it's 2 degrees. So good fun, good experience.
Yeah. Now, I know there'll be people listening as well, because I know when you mention Antarctica, people go, oh, but what's the seas like getting to Antarctica? Can you kind of touch on your experience and what you found with clients that have made the trip?
Yeah, it is a lotto. So it can be pretty calm, and you probably we found that in both directions we got a mixture. So at times it was pretty rough. Like, the first day or the first night, I think they had wind gusts up to 150 kilometers an hour. So if anyone knows anything about boating, um, that's not great. So, but the captains are very good. They're very skilled. So what I think the captain did for for that day was he went hard, and it caused us, it was pretty rough for a few hours, but he was outrunning it. So a little bit of pain to get to clearer weather was probably his strategy, I think. And then, sometimes it was peaceful. If people are really worried about it, I would say cabin location is really important. I had two cabins on the sailing, and the first one was right down the bottom at the front, and in the rough weather, it was really bad. I'll be honest. I felt like I was in a rodeo. I'm trying to sleep at night, but then I moved to I upgraded to a sort of a midship, up a few decks cabin, and wow, what a difference! So just cabin location and selection. People right at the back also found a little bit of vibration because in rough weather, when the props come out of the water, they vibrate. So you can feel that. So there's things that you can do to mitigate, and there's medication to help as well.
Yeah. And look, any cruising will have that as well. I know when you and I back in 2007, I think it was, kind of took a trip, we had a day and we were quite low down on the ship, and we had a day which was pretty rough.
Mm.
Um
Yep.
so
Yep.
probably didn't help that we had a good night out the night before, but you know,
Yep.
it was pretty rough.
One last thing I'll just say about Antarctica. Yeah, it was rough, and some people got seasick on the way to Antarctica. But when you get there, it's all forgotten because it's just absolutely beautiful. And I'm a big believer that in how the universe works is you've got to do the work to get to the good stuff. And so Antarctica is like that. You got to endure a little bit of rough weather, if it is rough, to get to the great stuff. And that's what I would focus my energies on rather than just worrying too much about it.
Yeah, perfect. And I think, just you sharing your insights on your adventure and journey really shows that there's far more pros than cons to some of these adventure trips as well, right?
Yeah.
You've got to go through a little bit of that, but when you're there, you're going to be like, oh, you're going to forget about the rough seas
Mhm.
or anything around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark, can you share like, can you share a story, or have you got an example? I'm sure you've got many, but one that sticks out where clients came to you with a jam-packed scenario and you kind of help them kind of coach, I suppose, or you coach them through a trip, adjusted them to things, as you say, influenced them in a good way, and what that, how that trip kind of changed them and how they kind of came back.
There's lots of examples. And it's interesting. We have a very high repeat client rate. So I find over the years, more and more clients, their itineraries get more, like more efficient and more simple as they go because they want to experience it. Um, I've had, um, I've had times where, Um, I know there was a family where it was a 3-week itinerary, and I had some influence on their itinerary, but I couldn't have all the influence that I wanted to. And I did say to them, "You will come back and say we did too much." And they're like, "Yeah, I know, we know we're going to say that." And guess what? When they came back, yeah, we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't do that much again. Um, so it happens all the time. And in fact, one of the AI itineraries that I just talked about, and they haven't travelled yet. We're we're in the process of booking and finalising everything. But they came to me a month ago with an AI itinerary that was ludicrous. It was crazy. And over that month, we've got to the point now where I think the destinations over a 3-week period are halved. Yeah. But it's taken a month for us to coach that client and get them thinking, they'll go out and do some research. Um, but yeah, and we've reduced probably 5 flights internally by doing it, the design of the itinerary. And one thing I just want to note while we're talking about reducing flights and what have you is a lot of people think that you know, saving money on their trip is by booking it themselves, by staying up on a Tuesday night for 4 hours on booking.com and saving $20 a night because they found it on this site cheaper than what have you. And that is um, not the way that most people that we see save money on their trips. The big saving is in the design of their trip from the start. It's not saving $20 a night by searching 6 different booking sites. And so we see that all the time, and we help people save a lot of money by making their itineraries more efficient.
Yeah, and sometimes people will book air flights, right? And they'll book it for the cheapest fare. But then there might need to be a change or circumstances change, right? And then it's like, actually, your change fee is 900 euros or 900 Australian or whatever it is. I've been through that as well. And now it's like when I book something, I kind of go, actually, I prefer to book, maybe pay a little bit more, but have a little bit more flexibility than book those cheaper flights.
Mm. Yeah, I estimate I've done the numbers a few times with clients with our clients and bookings, but I estimate around 30% of the trips we book, the client will change something.
Yep.
That's a lot, and I think that's a lot more than people think. And it could be because of um, the health of a family member that's gone downhill. It could be that, oh, now my daughter's university graduation has been moved to this date, and now we've got to change our trip. It could be like there's so many reasons that people have to change now, and so we book flexible rates for accommodation all the time. We make sure that we avoid the the nasty down and dirty, no frills options because people need flexibility most of the time these days, particularly if you're in your probably 30s, 40s, 50s, where you've got family, you've got a lot of, and in your 40s and 50s, you've probably got parents that are getting older. You've got children still active. You've got a lot going on, and trying to book a trip, it's sometimes it's tough because there's so much going on all the time.
Yeah. And do you think if people that shift their perspective or shift their view on how they travel, and you've seen, as you've said a number of clients kind of start out with these busy trips and then they kind of start to get a little bit quieter and they leave a bit more time and they come back a little bit more rested. Do you think how people travel actually changes how they live as well?
Oh, I think it's all linked. Travel is such a emotional and it's so close to our heart. And I think it does inspire us to do things differently. I know if I'm staying at a wellness resort on holiday, I'm inspired to come back and make some changes when I get home, or seeing how different cultures live, or that perspective, particularly if you go to uh, areas which are, there's poverty or certainly not the standards that we have here. I think we come back and we go, wow, okay, yep, we're doing all right, and life is pretty good. So yeah, there is so much to potentially unpack there with regards to either mental health from that perspective, or uh,
Mm.
connection, reconnecting um, with your family or with your partner. I think that's a massive one. If you come back from a great holiday, your marriage or your relationship is better
Mm.
because you've had the
Yep.
time. So yeah, I think the answer to that is your question is yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, because I think when you do, and we've done the overland hike together, and we've been overseas, and we've both traveled in different locations. You get to those points where you just sit there and go, wow, like peace. And then you have great ideas. Like we had some great conversations when we were overseas and you get clarity. And when you come back, you kind of go, oh, how can I get that clarity or how can I get that peace? Or so when you get back, it's kind of like, oh, let's go on a hike. Or, rather than going into the city for lunch, driving out into the country and finding a nice cafe or restaurant out in a country town somewhere, right? So you can bring some of these elements into your kind of every week life.
Mm. And a great little story I just thought of from last year on the river cruise that we did along the Rhine. The company we used, Ama Waterways, have a wellness expert on board, and there was this couple from, I think, Michigan, one of those states that start with M in the state. So apologies if I got that wrong, but they joined the wellness classes every morning, and they weren't fitness freaks. They were just regular people. And at the end of I went to the session on the last day, and the wellness instructor was talking to them about how much better their flexibility. Like you can see in just a
Mm.
week, the change in how they were going about those wellness classes from day one. Now, they had a beautiful time on the Rhine, exploring beautiful villages and experiences, but they also actually looked after themselves at the same time. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and we've seen it as well. We've run a men's retreat together, and we've both been to retreats as well, and it's interesting from the start of the retreat to the end, people look younger, happier. They look like this
Yeah.
weight has absolutely been shifted off their shoulders.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'd love if people are listening, and maybe some of this is resonating around how they can plan their adventures in the future. Is one thing that I um, talk about a lot is we fall into a trip like a marathon, the end of the marathon normally, right? We're trying to get that the to do list that would normally take us 2 weeks to do at work. We get done in a day, the last day before we go. We're crazy, um, and then your holiday needs to be your break to set you up for your next, what I call it, your next sprint of work or life. So let's say you have 2 holidays a year. When you come back from that holiday, you've got 6 months of life, family, goals, everything that we do. Don't you want to come into that 6 month period the best version of yourself, not exhausted
Mm.
and just stumbling back into work? It just doesn't make sense. And we still hear of people that are flying in 6 a.m. on the Monday morning after their 3 week holiday and going to work. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that's just insanity, because you're not setting yourself up for success by doing that. Your vacation is a break, it's a reset, it's to get clarity, and it's to set you up for when you come back and you want to be winning at life.
Yep. And does that come into like what days you fly out on and what days you go away, come back on?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So yeah, don't you know, don't fall into the construct of your week. So the weekends are the most expensive times to fly because that's what everyone does, right? Um, and my favorite day to go back to work is Thursday. So whether you fly home from your trip on Tuesday or Wednesday, um, and back to work Thursday, 2 days, have the weekend, and then you can you're really back to work on the Monday fully. And what I find is by going in on a Thursday, you miss a lot of. If you're in a corporate role, there's always meetings on a Monday, setting up the projects for the week, the follow ups, the delegation, etc. And then if you come in on a Wednesday or Thursday, all that's done, right? So you can have a bit of time to catch up, um, and then you'll normally find that after a long trip, a long haul trip, day 2 or 3 of getting home is where you get really tired. And so then that's your weekend. You can have some good rest and you can go back to work. So, and your airfares are probably going to be cheaper by doing it midweek to midweek.
Yeah, perfect. That's some great tips. What else would you, for those sitting there going, okay, I'm looking at planning holidays this year. What else, most people get 4 weeks out of 52 each year. What are some other things, if they're kind of at the starting stage of wanting to travel this year? What are some questions or what are some tips that you would want them to think about before they just kind of launch themselves into just starting booking flights?
I think the best question is, what's the holiday I need versus the holiday I want? You ask yourself that question, and straight away you get yourself into a different mindset of getting away from, I guess, that noise of what you think you should be doing versus, okay, what do I actually need? Where am I in life? What do I need? Am I feeling a little bit flat? Do I need some inspiration? Do I
Mm.
need to go somewhere beautiful, like Do I need to go and hike in the Dolomites in Italy and just re-inspire myself? Or if it's mum and dad are both professional, working hard, trying to run a family, they don't spend much time together. Don't go and do a theme park holiday with your kids where it's crazy and lots going on. Go on somewhere where you can actually have some space and some time to reconnect as a family and with your partner. Right. So thinking about what I need, that is, I think, the most important question. The other great question is, how do I want to come back?
Mm.
Stephen Covey had a great book, Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of his was begin with the end in mind, and I think that's so true with travel. Uh, the other thing I would say is just smaller chunks. Quite often, a good 3-day weekend somewhere where there's no stress, there's not a lot of logistics involved. That can have at the right place, the right venue, right destination. That can have a great impact where you can come back to life feeling, like you've had a week off.
Yeah, yeah. Now, talk to me about mind and body travel. For those listening, what's the difference between mind and body travel rather than a retail kind of travel
Yep.
agency? I know the answer to this, but I want the listeners to hear out of your mouth.
Our mission is to inspire and influence people to travel better. As simple as that is, we just want people to travel better. So that is about making better decisions about what you're doing, where you're going, why you're going, and what all that looks like. It's also how you travel. So um, booking, it could be the difference between booking an itinerary where the flight on the way back is overnight rather than daytime, or there's just subtle ways that we can change how we approach people's travel to make it overall a better experience. So, and the other thing, one of our values is our fourth value on our company values is challenge everything, and that's a very strange value to have when you are in a sales business where we sell travel, so we're in a sales business. But we actually pride ourselves that we are confident enough to challenge our clients and say, "Do you really want to do that? Do you, do you really
Mm.
want to tick off 10 cities in 10 days in Europe and be unpacking every second night and getting on a train every second day and lugging your luggage around? Do you really want to do that? Like, is that what you're trying to achieve from this holiday?" So challenging our clients, I think, really sets us apart rather than a lot of retail travel agencies will, you know, in the industry, we call them order takers, will just go, oh, that's what the customer asked for, and that's what we're going to give them, and then everyone's happy. That's not how we operate.
Mm. Yep. So one of the things that you hear out there is, "Oh, I book it online or I book it myself because it's cheaper."
Yep.
Travel agents make more money by booking my travel.
So there's a big myth that travel agents cost a lot more money. In fact, so we may charge some booking fees, but we're not talking anything crazy. But we'll likely either will provide value in either saving you money through designing your itinerary and having the intuition of what should change and maybe where we can improve your itinerary. But we can also add value to your overall experience. So, my favorite analogy is building a deck at home. I could go to Bunnings and buy timber, and I could build a deck. I could go on YouTube. I could work out how to put it all together. Um, but I can guarantee that there would be 10 trips to Bunnings for tools that I didn't need, for extra timber because I've cut things incorrectly, what have you, what have you. Right. So you kind of get the analogy. And I would get a deck, but would I get a deck that would last as long or look as great? And so the analogy is the same with travel. That everyone can book holiday. So and we're happy for people that feel confident and know what they're doing to do that. But if people want support, if they want guidance, if they're open to suggestions and open to having someone, guide them through that process, then we're happy to help. What we don't want and what we don't enjoy is when, and I'll use the deck analogy again. I start building a deck. I realize that it's too overwhelming, and I try to find a chippy to come and finish it off for me. Now, that chippy, no chippy is going to want to take on that job, right? And it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be harder for them because they haven't started it. And we like to talk to our clients from the start, the very, very start. They started dreaming about a holiday. Let's have a conversation because we can guide the plan from the start and make sure that it's all going to work.
Mm. And I think people listening as well, and I know I've understood this over the, years of traveling as well. And the benefit that I've got is that just that extra, okay, we're going to book Thursday to Monday in this location, things like, well, just so you know, this site is actually closed on Sunday. It doesn't open till late. It only opens late in the afternoon on Monday. So if you're booking some of these itineraries yourself, right, or locations, flights, just from, "Oh, okay, we're going to get Thursday," you got to take into account. And sometimes I know you've said to me, well, actually, you're probably better off flying in here, or, that's an overnight flight. Why don't you have a stay over? There's all that added benefit. And it was interesting as well. One of the benefits, and one of the examples that one of our mutual friends I was caught up with the other day, and, we were talking about his family trip, and he says, "Oh, Mark actually ended up booking, some of it. And he actually saved us more money than we were actually going to do ourselves because there's different configurations and, family
Yep.
setups and stuff like that." So it was interesting to know because sometimes people will go, "Oh, they just book these retreats and they just book these wellness trips because it's mind and body travel." But, you know, on all travel, you're happy to kind of look at. Obviously, there's the domestic, you're not going to book the, you know, Sydney return or whatever it is, right? Like, but it's more of these real kind of, you know, trips that have got a lot of moving parts. And I think when trips have got a lot of moving parts, and you kind of mentioned it earlier as well, if there's a health or there's a sickness or if there's something, a reason that someone's got to come back, spending all that time on airlines and trying to look at different configurations and everything like that. I know in many cases, friends and for us as well as a family, you've helped many times and the team's helped many times in actually going, no, 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 hang on, let me bring here. Okay, we can get you on this flight. We can change this around. We can change that around.
Mhm.
And if you're overseas and you've got, an issue or there's a death in the family or there's a emergency you've got to come back for, or, kind of reduce your trip. The last thing you want is the stress of, you know, phoning different places and, a lot of the time there's different flights and different carriers and it's just an absolute schmozzle.
Yeah, and we probably do more of that than we think or acknowledge. There was some massive things last year that we helped clients with, whether it was death or um, massive health issues or things like that that they needed to return home for, and to have someone that can look at things subjectively, that can look at things in a calm manner in those instances, and have access to change things a lot easier than staying on hold to a airline for a couple of hours. I mean, if you've just had a massive trauma or traumatic event in your life, the last thing that you want to be doing is trying to call your airline in Italy or France to try and work out how you can get home.
Mm.
And it does happen. It happens more often than you think. We had a recent example of just even the airline changing a flight. We had clients in Hamilton Island. They were over from the UK. There was that cyclone a couple of weeks ago. Qantas had no flights for 2 days. So they had to stay on Hamilton Island for another 2 days, and it was really disrupting their itinerary because they were going to go to Cairns and then we're going to go to a few other places after that. And they're from the UK, so they can't just go back easily. Um, but we held flights the next day. We worked out the flights were gonna. We actually grabbed the last two seats on this flight, and once we realised that the flight was going ahead, we reissued the ticket and we got them on their way a day earlier than the airline was going to do for them. And
Mm.
and they were forever grateful. So Those sorts of things happen, yeah, almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah, which is why you get so many repeat clients,
Mm,
right? Because the experience and it's there, that care. And I know, um, you know, having gone on walks and us had many coffees and chats together around the makeup of your business, even when you're employing or you're bringing new team members in, um, what I love is for yourself and Steve, your business partner, there's this whole, they've got to fit. They can't come in with the baggage of, "We're just a travel agency."
mhm,
They've got to come in and actually feel it themselves, and so that they can obviously assist clients in the best way
mhm,
possible.
yep. And we've got a fantastic example at the moment. One of our team members is doing a lot in the ladies' travel space. There's a lot of solo travel, female travelers, widowed, divorced, but also women that wanna travel when they get into their 50s and 60s and the husbands don't wanna travel. That that is the biggest boom in travel at the moment. And, there was a story just this week where, a lady from Gympie in Queensland, she made contact, is gonna come on one of our ladies' tours, and I think she's in her late 60s, and she's never traveled overseas, and she
Wow.
wants to she wants to travel, and she saw that we're offering these hosted female tours, and now she's booked two. So she's never traveled overseas, and the first one that she's done uh, is Croatia. So never traveled
Wow.
overseas, and she's traveling to Croatia in her late 60s for her first international trip because we've got um, a host, and we've got a group of female travelers, and it's designed for female travelers that they can travel, with security, with comfort, and with peace of mind. And when I hear of people like that that have not experienced the joy of travel, and we can actually help them um, have the confidence to take the plunge, then that's pretty awesome.
And I think one of the key things around these group trips as well is that you actually introduce lifelong friends to people, right? They end up being sometimes travel friends for years. I know when we've been on retreats and we've been on travel as well, you set up your WhatsApp groups and, it's kinda like a community, which is really important when you've got people that wanna solo travel, but then they're like, "Oh, well, I can jump in with a group," and then they feel that security and that support as well.
Yep, and it's connection. We're digitally connected these days, but we're not in person connected, and people crave that. And when they get that, they want more of it.
Yeah. So solo ladies traveling is a trend. Are there any other trends that you're seeing come through the travel industry?
Um, Comfort. So, since COVID, particularly, people want more comfort. So, from my clients, I sell more premium economy and business class than I do economy, and that's not.
Mm,
And we don't position ourselves as a luxury client or a luxury travel agency. But when we discuss what they're after, and when I get to know what they're about, uh, premium economy is a massive boom at the moment, and economy prices have gone up. Yep, premium economy's gone up as well, but probably not as much. There's a bit more competition now, so that's a real example. And we're seeing families travel premium economy now instead of
mm.
5-10 years ago, families would have traveled economy. So obviously, there's the overall economy in Australia is doing quite well for certain demographics, and they certainly want more comfort. And uh, I probably would say that goes across everything. Where people are staying, and they do want different experiences. So, just today before this podcast, I'm doing a European Christmas itinerary for some clients, and I was just looking at is they're doing a self-drive in France, and I was looking at some chateaus in France, and that might sound quite exclusive, but um, they're actually not as expensive, and in winter they're even better value. So, looking at those different experiences, and people want something that's a little unique and interesting. And
Mhm.
when we recommend interesting and um, nice things, people don't want to say no to it anymore. They
Yeah.
want that, and yet, it costs a little bit of money for bit more money for great experiences, but it's not more than as much as you think. But then you have a much better time. So it's about a little bit extra sometimes goes a long way in travel, and people are really starting to embrace that. Yeah, I'm happy to pay a little bit extra because I get so much more.
Yeah. And I think the key thing is as well is that long range planning. So not doing last minute trips because last minute trips are always going to be expensive a lot of the time. And also if you've got flexibility, right? So sometimes the shoulder seasons, you can get some really good rates compared to, you know, going to Europe in June, July
Mm.
in the middle of summer.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's it has Europe's actually changed because peak season is now May and September.
Yep.
Used to be June, July, August, but people don't want to pay the prices. They don't want the heat, and now September was our record month for Europe departures last year. It wasn't. It used to be
Yeah.
June.
Wow. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. And I'm finding as well lot more people are more I think it's post-COVID, but a lot more people are very much more diverse in their traveling around Europe as well. It used to be like France, Italy, Germany, you know, the UK. But now,
Yeah.
like when you're talking to people, they're like, oh, went to Slovenia, Norway, Sweden.
Yep.
You've got all these different trips now
Mm.
that I'm hearing a lot more of. So there's a lot more variety that people are stepping into as well now.
Yeah, I think in the travel industry, instead of so it's probably sort of BC and AC. I think we can say after COVID, um, because what trend we're really starting to see in the last just 3 to 6 months is people have done their makeup trips after COVID. They've gone to Europe and done the usual spots. They've gone to the States. They've gone to Canada. They've maybe gone to Bali. They've gone to New Zealand, and now they're looking for something different. So we're starting to see Africa become a lot more prevalent in our
Mm.
inquiries. We're seeing Eastern European. So, yeah, an itinerary design I've got on my list at the moment is Lithuania and Estonia and Poland, and doing that over the Christmas period. So Eastern Europe, things like Northern Lights, um, and Canada is is getting really popular now. I think because the states people don't want to go to the states, but if they still want to go in that region, they're going to Canada and South America as well. So people want more now. It's going deeper than what it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Once people could travel after COVID.
Yeah. I know some friends that have gone to Japan, and I know some friends that have gone to Canada, and both of them, they said there's more Australians you meet over there than
Mhm.
anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. Japan is. I think that's gone too far. If
Yep.
I'm honest. And I think in
Mm.
January we had 10 Japan inquiries in a week, and we're not a big travel agency. We're a boutique travel agency, and that that to me is it's probably gone too far. Where maybe just give Japan a miss for the moment. If you're and I'll just caveat on this: if you're just going to go and tick the box and go to Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto, um, maybe now's not the time because demand is up, which means prices are up, and it means that it's really busy. Japan, outside of those cities, is an amazing opportunity though, and that's where you've got quieter streets, you've got cheaper prices, you've got more authenticity, um, and what's funny is people may not know this about Japan, but a lot of places don't want tourists. So you can walk into as a Caucasian white male or, Aussie, you can walk into a restaurant and they'll say, "Oh, no, 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 no." But a lot of them don't want you because either we look like trouble or they're just sick of tourists, and they just want to look after their locals. And so, Japan is struggling massively with over tourism, and so we're starting to work. And on our website, we've got some itineraries that have beyond south of Kyoto and Osaka, we've got itineraries where you can cycle across these amazing bridges across all these islands into a place called Matsuyama. It's called the Shimanami Trail. There's a place called Beppu that has 2,500 hot springs. Like so, there is some phenomenal things just a 3-hour train ride out of the hotspots that everyone is doing in Japan. Um, but the challenge for we see with somewhere like Japan for Australians is people aren't allowing the budget and the time to do it properly. They're going for 10 days, tick the box, and come back. And it's really doing Japan an injustice rather than really exploring it. So anyway, that's Japan is uh, a hot spot and a controversial topic at the moment because it's the people aren't going for authentic trips.
Yeah, okay. Yep, 100%. Mark, summing up the episode, if there was a final message for those people listening, what would that be?
Wow, that's hard to sum up or one message. I really think as simple as this is, if your listeners are thinking about how they plan travels, less is more. So less destinations, less in like less day tours, less of everything, less moving around. Just pick some amazing places. Give yourself the space for that destination to come to you, for you to make decisions on the fly depending on how you feel,
Yep.
and be okay that you're not missing out. And to, a note on this is I said to a client recently about that was overloading a Europe itinerary. I said, "You haven't been there before. Europe is phenomenal, and every place you go is going to be phenomenal. So when you're there, you're not gonna be going, oh, I wish I'd gone here, here, and here as well. You're going to be going, wow, this place is amazing. So less is more.
Mm.
Restraint. Take stuff out of your trip, and you'll have a much better time and probably save money."
Yeah. Great advice, and advice that I've kind of heeded, and I appreciate the way I approach travel now in the locations and the destinations that I attend. So, bro, you and I could talk all day on travel and experiences and retreats. I always love sharing your insights, and sharing some of the wisdom that you've garnered over your 2 decades in the travel industry. And I love what Mind and Body Travel, and I love what you and Steve have built, and everything that the team does. So, truly grateful to have you, share your wisdom and share your insights with listeners. And there were some great tips and advice in there that I know will shift the conversation and shift the perspective on people as they head into their trips, this year and beyond.
All right. That's awesome. It's been great to chat.
What now? Where do people find you, Muff?
So our website, mindandbodytravel.com, and the same on Instagram and Facebook are the best places to find us. So, or just Google Mind and Body Travel, and we will come up. We're happy to have a conversation about, traveling better. And as I said during the podcast is, come to us early. Let's have a conversation early. And that way we can have the biggest impact on, your experience.
So I think it's great. I think everyone that's listened to this episode, really they're asking themselves the question, what travel do I need versus what travel they want, and I think that's a real key phrase. So look forward to talking more travel with you again soon.
Thanks, Steve.